It's 11:58 p.m. The last customer of the previous shift walks out through the automatic door with a box of painkillers and a bottle of water. The daytime pharmacist hands you the lab coat with a tired smile. She grabs her bag. She leaves. The door closes and you stay. You and 4,200 square feet of illuminated shelving. You and the constant hum of the insulin refrigerator. You and the register blinking on standby. You and the street outside, which looks normal during the day and like another planet at night. You put on the lab coat. You are the only pharmacist on duty at this location between midnight and 8 in the morning. Responsible technician, active license, 8-hour shift, alone. Welcome to the shift nobody wants and nobody understands. You didn't plan on the night shift. You graduated with honors, did your internship at a university hospital, passed your licensing exam in the top percentile. You had plans to pursue a clinical pharmacy residency, a civil service position, maybe a graduate degree, but you have $127,000 in student loan debt. You have an apartment you're renting across town. You have a mother with type 2 diabetes whose insurance covers 60% of her medications and the other 40% comes out of your pocket every month, roughly $840 on average. The night shift pays $2,400 more per month than the day shift. You do the math. You sign the contract. That was 18 months ago. You no longer have plans for residency. Not because you gave up, because the night shift gave you a different kind of training, one that no residency program offers and no pharmacology professor can simulate in a classroom. The night shift taught you what people are like when no one is watching. Midnight to 2 a.m. is the first block. This is the hour of those coming off their own shifts. Doctors, nurses, nursing technicians. They arrive with prescription in hand and the eyes of someone who hasn't slept properly in 36 hours. They know exactly what they want. They speak fast. They review the dispensing with a clinical eye. Sometimes they correct you. Rarely, but sometimes. You've learned not to feel diminished. You've learned that those 2 seconds of joint review have already prevented 2 of your own errors and 1 prescribing error in the last 18 months. These customers you respect with a specificity that is different from the others. Then come the insomniacs. 2 a.m. to 3:30 a.m. is their hour. Hey, don't have prescriptions. They don't have any rush. They arrive with the look of someone who has been awake longer than they should and doesn't quite know why. They ask for melatonin, herbal supplements. Sometimes they ask if there's something stronger in a voice that tries to sound casual but isn't. You know the difference between insomnia and anguish. Insomnia has a remedy. Anguish sometimes shows up in front of a pharmacy shelf at 2 a.m. because it's the only place that's open. You learn when to ask, "Are you doing okay?" in a tone that doesn't sound like protocol. Sometimes the answer is long. You listen. That's also part of the job. No licensing board documents it, but it's part of the job. You read prescriptions differently from any other professional. A doctor reads and prescribes. A patient reads and consumes. You read and interpret the entire context. You see a prescription for clonazepam 2 milligrams dated today, and you automatically run the calculation. This is the 3rd renewal in 45 days. The law allows renewal every 30 days for controlled substances on this schedule. This person is trying to get ahead of the calendar. You cannot dispense. You're going to have to explain this to someone who is probably having a very bad moment. You developed a way of saying no that doesn't humiliate. It took 4 months to develop. 3 difficult situations. One that you still think about sometimes at 4 a.m. when the shift slows down. You see a prescription for Ritalin 10 milligrams for a 34-year-old adult with a diagnosis of ADHD. The prescription is legitimate, the doctor is real, but it's 1:47 a.m. and the man in front of you has dilated eyes and accelerated speech that doesn't match someone coming to pick up routine medication. You dispense, but you ask when the last dose was. The answer tells you what you needed to know. You don't withhold the prescription. It's not your role to diagnose, but you make a mental note. And if he comes back this week, you'll know what to ask. You see a prescription for misoprostol. You know what misoprostol is prescribed for. You know it has legitimate indications for gastric ulcers and hospital-based labor induction. You also know what it means when the prescription is from a private OB/GYN with no hospital stamp for a woman in her early 20s who arrives alone at 3 a.m. and pays in cash. You dispense. You make no comment. You ask carefully whether she has someone with her tonight. She says yes. You don't know if it's true, but you asked. And you leave the crisis hotline number written on a small piece of paper tucked with the receipt. because there's an internal protocol you created on your own that isn't written in any manual. This is the work no one sees. There are nights that stay with you. Not all of them. Most pass. You learn not to carry the entire shift home with you, or you don't survive 18 months. But there are specific nights that settle in layers in your memory and that you access involuntarily when the shift goes too quiet. The night of the man with the plastic bag stays. He came in at 4:12 a.m. on a Tuesday in July. Grocery store plastics bag in hand. Work jacket still on. That beige worker's jacket that holds permanent grease stains no matter how many times you wash it. He put the bag on the counter. Inside were 18 different boxes of medication. He said they were his father's, that his father had died that afternoon, that his mother had asked him to return the medications because she didn't know what to do with them, and it made her sad to look at them. A pharmacy doesn't accept returns on continuous use medication without a receipt and without documentation. You know this. He probably knows this. But it's 4:12 a.m. and a man in his 50s is standing in front of you in a work jacket with red eyes holding a plastic grocery bag with his father's medications from the day his father died. You took the bag. You said you would forward it for proper disposal. That was true. The proper disposal process exists. A drug take-back program, collection bins installed at registered pharmacies, monthly pickup by the designated company. You said nothing about the receipt. You said nothing about documentation. You took the bag. The man stood still for 2 seconds, then said thank you in a way that wasn't about the medication. You still think about that bag sometimes. 18 boxes, metformin, losartan, aspirin, simvastatin, omeprazole. The entire life of a man you never knew, dispensed in small cardboard boxes over the years by pharmacists who also never knew him. The night of the teenage girl stays differently. She came in at 3:33 a.m. 15-16 years old. Sweatpants, school sneakers. She went straight to the pregnancy test shelf without looking at you. She stood in front of the tests for 2 minutes without picking anything up. You went to her. You asked if she needed help. She said she didn't know which one to buy. You explained the difference: digital and analog. Detection sensitivity. How long the result stays valid. She picked the cheapest one. You went to the register. She paid in coins. $24.90 worth of coins she pulled from a sweatpants pocket with a hand that was slightly trembling. You put the test in a bag. You included a reproductive health pamphlet that sits on the counter and that most daytime employees never offer because the day is busy and there's no time. She left. You stood still for a moment. Then you went back behind the counter. That's also part of the job. The stretch between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. is the quietest part of the shift. The city is at its lowest point of movement. The insomniacs are gone. The early risers haven't arrived yet. The rain, when there is any, seems louder at this hour. The fluorescent hum seems more audible. You use this time for the work the day shift never manages to finish. Expiration date checks on the controlled substance and antimicrobial inventory. Temperature verification on the insulin and immunobiological refrigerator. The cold chain for analog insulin requires maintenance between 36 degrees Fahrenheit and 46 degrees Fahrenheit, and you log the reading every 4 hours in the record book that health authorities will audit biannually. Update of the high alert medication inventory map, those requiring double verification at dispensing. Anticoagulants, oral chemotherapy agents, high concentration insulins, concentrated electrolytes. You do this in silence, with an attention the day doesn't allow. There is something about the silence of 4:30 a.m. that facilitates this kind of attention. It's not peace. It's an absence of noise sufficient for technical work to occupy the entire space of your consciousness. You like this hour. You've never admitted that to anyone. At 5:17 a.m. on a specific Monday, you remember precisely because it was the eve of your birthday, you notice a discrepancy in the tramadol 100 mg inventory. Tramadol is a weak opioid. Schedule 3 controlled substance. Every unit dispensed generates an entry in the National Controlled Substance Tracking System. Every unit in the physical inventory must match the system. 4 boxes are missing. You check twice, 3 times. You pull the controlled substance tracking report for the last 7 days on the terminal. You cross-reference with the incoming invoices. You cross-reference with the prescription logs. 4 boxes, gone. No dispensing record, no return documentation, no documented breakage. You stand in front of the terminal for 40 seconds. You know what this means. You know what you need to do. You know what will happen when you do it. You open the internal incident reporting system. You document everything: date, time, quantity, lot number. Cross-reference with the tracking system. Name of the responsible pharmacist on record. You save, you print, you sign. Here I want to ask you something. You just documented a controlled opioid discrepancy that points to internal diversion. Someone inside the pharmacy, likely from the previous shift, is taking medication. You have the record. You have the proof. But you know that when this goes up to management, there will be an investigation. There will be pressure. There will be people who will try to convince you that you miscounted, that it was a system error, that it's not worth the trouble. Do you hand in the document first thing tomorrow morning and open the formal process? Or do you keep a copy, wait one more week to confirm the pattern with more data, and then hand it in with irrefutable evidence? Tell me in the comments. You hand it in the same day, not out of impulsiveness, out of calculation. Every day you wait is another day the diversion continues. It's another day that someone who should be receiving their prescribed tramadol doesn't receive it because the inventory is off. It's another day that your signature as the responsible pharmacist sits over a system you know is compromised. You cannot sign for what you cannot guarantee. The regional manager listens to you for 20 minutes the next morning. She takes notes. She doesn't dispute the numbers. She says she'll bring in the compliance team. 3 weeks later, an employee from the intermediate shift is let go. No one officially confirms to you that it was because of your report, but you know. The shift ends at 8 a.m. The daytime pharmacist arrives with coffee in hand and bag over her shoulder. She is 8 years younger than you. She still has plans for residency. You hand her the lab coat. You count the register. You sign the record book. You do the verbal handover of the night's incidents. Nothing serious today. A temperature reading at 3 a.m. that registered 46.7 degrees Fahrenheit in the insulin refrigerator, corrected within 6 minutes, documented within acceptable limits. She takes notes. She smiles. You grab your bag. Outside, the city is waking up. Horns, buses, the smell of a bakery, sun that you won't see because when you get home, you'll close the blinds and sleep until 4 p.m. You pass an elderly man of about 70 waiting at the bus stop. He's carrying a small transparent bag with 2 boxes of medication, metformin and losartan. You recognize the boxes. They're the same ones that were in the grease-stained jacket man's plastic bag. You don't know this man's story. You never will. He may not walk into your pharmacy tonight, or he might. You don't know. What you know is that someone will be there when he does, with a lab coat, with an active license, with eyes trained to read what the prescription doesn't say. Sometimes it will be you. Sometimes it will be someone else, but someone will be there. A late-night pharmacy is not just inventory and dispensing. It's the only place in the city that never closes its door to whoever arrives at the worst hour of their life. And there is always someone in a lab coat on the other side of the counter who has learned over time that listening is also part of the prescription. Only that part doesn't have a diagnostic code, and it never will.